Imagine a place where darkness isn't just the absence of light, but something far more sinister. A place where the very air seems to pulsate with the remnants of countless lives lost to a dark, twisted fate. Picture yourself stepping into an abandoned hospital, its silent halls stretching endlessly in front of you, the air thick with decay. The windows are boarded up, casting the building in an eerie, suffocating darkness. You hear only the faint sound of your own breathing, yet the silence seems almost alive, as though the walls themselves are holding their breath. But what if I told you that those who ventured into this place never left? What if the spirits of the patients and the sinister forces lurking within these decaying walls have been waiting for someone like you to step inside? Tonight, I'll take you through the doors of this cursed hospital, a place no one dares to enter and live to tell the tale. Are you ready to face the truth? Because what you're about to discover isn't just a story, it's a warning. Once you enter, there's no telling if you'll ever make it out. The hospital was built in the early 1900s, originally intended to be a beacon of hope. It was a symbol of medical advancement, a place where the most skilled doctors of the time worked to heal the sick and save lives. But beneath the surface, there were whispers, strange occurrences that nobody could quite explain. At night, some said they heard eerie footsteps in the halls, but when they looked, no one was there. Others spoke of flickering lights and shadows that moved of their own accord. Still, many brushed it off as old buildings playing tricks on the mind. But eventually, the rumors grew darker. One night, a patient, a man who had been under the care of one of the hospital's most renowned doctors, disappeared. His bed was left undisturbed, but he was nowhere to be found. The staff conducted searches, but he was never seen again. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but it was the first time it became public knowledge. Slowly, the hospital's once bright reputation started to fade. Patients were reluctant to stay, and doctors began to leave. Within a few years, the hospital was abandoned, its walls echoing with the memories of those who had once trusted it with their lives. The first time I stepped foot into the hospital, I was only there to explore. An urban explorer looking to uncover the mysteries hidden within these decaying walls. But from the moment I entered, something felt wrong. The air inside was stale, like it had been locked away for decades, untouched by time. The smell of mildew and decay was overpowering, and there was a strange metallic scent that seemed to hang in the air. It was as though the hospital itself was suffocating, its very breath trapped inside. I wandered through the hallways, feeling a creeping unease settle over me with every step. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my footsteps on the cracked, rotting floors. The once bright white walls were now yellowed with age, and the windows, boarded up, allowed only a faint trickle of light to penetrate the gloom. I paused at a door, slightly ajar, and felt a strange pull to enter. Something about it felt different, as if the room beyond was calling to me. I pushed the door open, the rusted hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The room was a small office, filled with old papers, discarded files, and medical equipment. But what caught my attention was the desk. There, lying in the middle of the desk, was an old journal. Its pages were yellowed, its cover cracked and faded. But what stood out the most was the fresh blood stain on the corner of the page. It was still wet, the crimson color contrasting sharply with the yellowed paper. How could this be? This hospital had been abandoned for years. No one had been inside to disturb the place. Yet there, on the page, was a stain as fresh as if it had been made just moments ago. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages, each one filled with the desperate ramblings of a patient trapped in the hospital. The entries grew more frantic with each passing day, detailing strange happenings, shadows that moved of their own accord, and whispers in the night. The final entry sent a chill down my spine. "They're coming for me. I can hear them. The doctors. No, they're not doctors. There's something else. I don't think I'll make it out of here. As I continued to explore the hospital, my curiosity drove me deeper into the building. The farther I went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Every corner I turned felt like it held a new secret, a new piece of the hospital's dark history. But nothing prepared me for what I would find next. I stumbled upon the operating room, its door hanging loosely on its hinges. The room inside was eerily preserved, as though time had stood still in this place. Surgical instruments lay scattered across the countertops, rusted and forgotten, their once gleaming surfaces now dulled by years of neglect. The walls were stained with something I couldn't quite identify. Blood, perhaps, or something worse. But it wasn't just the room that disturbed me. It was the feeling of being watched. As I stepped further inside, a sense of dread washed over me, the air growing heavier with every breath. I noticed a small table in the corner, draped with a faded sheet. I approached cautiously, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. As I lifted the sheet, I froze. There, lying beneath it, was a body. But not just any body. A body that looked as though it had been there for decades, its flesh rotted and decomposed. Yet, the bones, those were still intact. I stumbled back, horrified, my heart pounding in my chest. What had happened here? Who was this person? And why were they left to rot in the very place they had once trusted for healing? I felt sick to my stomach, but my curiosity pushed me onward. As I examined the body more closely, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A name tag. It read, Dr. Edward Blackwood. The very name of the doctor whose disappearance had marked the beginning of the hospital's fall from grace. The man who had once been hailed as a genius, but whose obsession with his work had led to his undoing. The more I explored, the more the hospital's past revealed itself to me, piece by piece. But it was the journal I had found earlier that held the most unsettling revelation. As I flipped through the pages again, I found a hidden note, tucked between two of the older entries. It was a letter, written by the very doctor whose name I had seen on the body. The letter was addressed to a fellow doctor, and its contents made my stomach churn. Experiments. Experiments on the patients who had been admitted to the hospital. But these weren't ordinary medical procedures. No, these were twisted, inhumane experiments, aimed at unlocking the secrets of life and death itself. The letter described how Dr. Blackwood had become obsessed with the idea of eternal life, using the hospital's patients as his test subjects. They had been drugged, operated on, and subjected to unimaginable horrors, all in the name of science. But something had gone horribly wrong. The patients didn't die. Instead, they became something else, something not quite human. As I read the letter, something clicked inside me. My great-grandfather had been a doctor at this very hospital, working alongside Dr. Blackwood. I had heard the stories, how he had mysteriously vanished the night the hospital was shut down. No one ever knew what happened to him, but the family always said he had left for another city, started a new life. But as I stood there, holding the letter in my hands, I realized the truth. My great-grandfather hadn't left. He had stayed, just like Dr. Blackwood. He had become a part of the hospital's dark legacy. And now I had uncovered the terrifying secret that had been buried for so long. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't just an observer here, I was a part of this twisted story. My own bloodline was entangled in the horrors that had taken place within these walls. I had come here seeking answers, but all I found was a curse that had been passed down through the generations. I tried to leave. I thought I could escape, that the nightmare would end if I just walked away. But as I turned toward the exit, something was different. The hallway that had once led me to the front door now seemed endless, stretching out in front of me like a maze with no way out. I rushed down the corridor, heart pounding, desperate to find an exit. But every door I tried led me back to the same place, the same endless hallways. It was as though the hospital itself was alive, trapping me in its cursed grasp. And then, I heard it. The sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, but there was no one there. The whispers returned, louder this time, echoing through the walls. My name. A voice I recognized. It was my great-grandfather, calling to me from the shadows. The truth was clear now. The hospital was no ordinary place. It was a trap, designed to ensnare those who came too close to its secrets. My great-grandfather, Dr. Blackwood, and all the others who had been consumed by the hospital were still here, trapped in its endless nightmare. And now, I was part of it. There was no escape. As I stand here, trapped in this cursed place, I realize the truth. Some stories aren't meant to be uncovered. Some places are meant to stay forgotten. And once you step into a place like this, there's no turning back. The darkness here doesn't just haunt the walls, it seeps into your very soul, claiming you as its own. So, if you ever find yourself standing at the threshold of an abandoned hospital, remember this story. Because once you cross that line, there's no going back. And you might just find yourself trapped in the same nightmare that I'm living.